Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. What if everything you were told about getting older was a lie designed to make you invisible? Stay with me for just a moment, because what I'm about to share with you today is not a motivational speech. It's not a list of tips. It's a truth, a deep, sometimes uncomfortable, always liberating truth about who you are right now in this exact season of your life. You have spent decades pouring yourself into other people, into children who needed you, into partners who leaned on you, into jobs that consumed you, into communities that depended on you. And somewhere in all of that beautiful giving, you may have quietly lost the thread back to yourself. This video is for you, the woman who is somewhere between, I thought I'd feel more settled by now, and I wonder if my best days are still ahead of me. The woman who is brave enough to ask the question most people are afraid to whisper, what is my purpose now? That question is not a sign of failure. It is the bravest question a woman can ask after a life of giving. And today, together, we are going to answer it. Before we can talk about where you're going, we have to honor where you've been, because healing, real healing, never skips the tender parts. Many of the women I've worked with over the years, brilliant, strong, accomplished women, arrive at their late 50s or 60s carrying a weight they can barely name. It's not depression exactly. It's not anxiety in the traditional sense. It's a kind of invisible grief. Grief for the version of yourself you set aside for everyone else. Grief for the dreams that got postponed and somehow never got unpostponed. Grief for the energy you once had, the body you once knew, the clarity you once felt about who you were and what you were here to do. And this is the part that takes the most grace to admit, grief for the roles that defined you that are now changing. The children who don't need you the way they used to, the career that ended or is ending, the partnership that shifted, the identity that no longer fits the way it once did. Can I tell you something? This grief is not weakness. This grief is love, love that has nowhere new to go yet. And our work today, your work, is to give that love a new direction. Psychology teaches us something remarkable about this life stage. Researchers call it the second journey, develop a mental passage that begins somewhere in our 50s or 60s when the external markers of identity begin to loosen their grip. And what that loosening reveals, if we let it, if we have the courage to sit in the discomfort rather than immediately filling it with business, is the truest version of who we are, stripped of performance, stripped of obligation, just you. The psychologist Carl Jung called this individuation the lifelong process of becoming fully yourself. And here is what he discovered. It happens most powerfully in the second half of life, not despite our age. Because of it, you are not too late. You are not past your prime. You are, in the most precise psychological sense of the word, right on time. Now, I want to talk about something that almost no one speaks about openly, but that nearly every woman in this season of life has felt in her bones. The feeling of becoming invisible. Our culture, and I say this not with bitterness, but with clarity, Our culture has a deeply uncomfortable relationship with older women. It worships youth. It commodifies beauty in its narrowest, youngest form. It confuses productivity with worth and loudness with power. And so when the world stops looking at you the way it once did, it is so easy, so dangerously easy, to begin to believe that its gaze was ever the truer of your value. But here is what I need you to hear. And I need you to hear this not just in your mind, but in the deepest room of your heart. You were never meant to be seen by the world. You were meant to see yourself. The visibility that was taken from you by culture, by aging, by shifting roles, that was never real power, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's attention. That is sanctuary power. And it has been inside you this entire time. I want to talk about boundaries because this word gets misused so often that we forget what it truly means. A boundary is not a wall. It is not coldness. It is not the dramatic announcement of what you will and will not tolerate. A boundary is a declaration of self-respect. It says, I know what I need, I know what drains me and what restores me, and I am finally at this point in my life willing to honor that knowledge. For many women in this season, the most profound boundary work is not keeping other people out. It's keeping yourself in, staying connected to your own desires, your own rhythms, your own voice, even when the world is very loud and very demanding. And this, my dear, is where your new purpose begins to take shape, not out there in the world, but right here in this quiet sanctuary of self-awareness. Let me share something with you that I find genuinely extraordinary and that I believe with everything in me that every woman in midlife and beyond deserves to know. Neuroscience has now confirmed what the wisest among us have always intuited. The brain in its 50s, 60s, and 70s is not declining. It is transforming. Research from the field of positive neuropsychology shows that older brains become more integrated, meaning the emotional and rational centers begin to communicate more fluidly than they ever did in youth. This is why older women are often better at seeing the full picture, better at reading a room, better at knowing in their gut what truly matters. The ancient cultures understood this. They didn't call it decline. They called it wisdom. They built their societies around it. They placed their elders, especially their elder women, at the center, not the margins. Somewhere along the way, our modern world forgot this. And women paid the deepest price for that forgetting. But here is the truth that doesn't ask anyone's permission to be true. You are at the apex of your emotional intelligence. This is your most powerful season. So let's talk about purpose, real purpose. Not the kind that looks impressive on an resume, not the kind that earns you approvals from people who were never really paying attention anyway. I'm talking about soul purpose, the quiet, steady, irreplaceable contribution that only you can make by virtue of everything you have survived, everything you have loved, and everything you have learned. Purpose in this season doesn't always look like launching something or building something. Sometimes it looks like becoming something, becoming more fully yourself, becoming the living, breathing example of what grace under pressure looks like. Becoming the safe harbor that the younger women in your life desperately need. Sometimes purpose is simply presence, the willingness to show up fully, honestly, without pretense, in the lives of people who need a woman of depth and substance to show them what's possible. I want to pause here for just a moment, right in the middle of our time together, because I want to ask you something. Is there someone in your life, a sister, a dear friend, a woman who raised you or whom you have watched struggle, who needs to hear what we're talking about today? Someone who has been carrying the weight of my best days are behind me for too long. If someone came to mind just now, trust that. That's not coincidence. That's the quiet voice of your own compassion recognizing a need. Send her this video. You don't even need to write a message. Just send it. The gesture alone will tell her everything she needs to know about how much you love her. We've talked about what the world got wrong about women our age. Now I want to talk about what we sometimes get wrong about ourselves, because one of the most important things I've learned, both from the research and from sitting with thousands of women in their most honest moments, is this: the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we deserve have more power over our lives than almost anything else. These stories, I call them inherited diminishments. They were handed to us by a culture that profits from women's self-doubt, by a generation before that was told the same things, by our own pain, looking for a narrative that would explain why we didn't get everything we deserved. And I want to honor that pain. Truly, I don't want us to just positive think our way past it, because that isn't healing. That's just a prettier kind of suppression. Real healing, the kind that actually changes how you walk through a room, how you speak to yourself at 2 a.m., how you make decisions. That kind of healing requires us to look at the story, name it, and then gently, firmly, with the full authority of a woman who has earned her wisdom, choose a different one. So I want to offer you a practice every morning, or whenever you feel that familiar whisper of not enough. I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. What have I survived that deserves my own respect? What do I know now that I could only know from having lived this long? Who is one person whose life is better because I am in it? These are not affirmations. They are attestations, evidence-based truths about the woman you actually are, drawn from the life you have actually lived. And every time you answer them, you are choosing a new story, one that is not just more kind, it is more accurate. I want to talk to you now about creating what I call your inner sanctuary. The psychological and spiritual space where you go to remember who you are when the world has done its best to make you forget. Your sanctuary is not necessarily a physical place. It is a state of being that you learn to access even in the middle of a noisy life, even in the middle of difficulty. Building your sanctuary means first becoming radically honest about what restores you versus what depletes you. Not what should restore you. Not what used to restore you 20 years ago. What actually, in this body, in this life, right now, fills you back up. For some of you, it's creative expression, the brush, the garden, the kitchen, the page. For some, it's community, the warmth of women who truly know you. For some, it's solitude, the rare and beautiful gift of your own uninterrupted company. And for many of you, it is something deeply spiritual, that sense of being held by something larger than yourself. Whatever it is, honor it, protect it, give it space in your schedule with the same fierce protectiveness you once gave everyone else's needs. Because this is not selfishness. This is stewardship. You are stewarding the most important resource in your world, yourself. And here is where your purpose and your sanctuary meet. When you are full, when you've done the work of healing, of self-knowing, of building that inner home that no one can take from you, you overflow naturally. You don't have to try to make a difference. You simply are the difference. The women who have done this work carry something in their presence that is almost impossible to describe, but impossible to miss. It is a kind of settled grace, a quiet authority, a warmth that doesn't need to announce itself, and younger women are drawn to it because they are starving for it. They are starving for the sight of a woman who has walked through the fire and come out not destroyed, but refined, a woman who knows her own mind, who has made peace with her own story, who lives each day not in pursuit of approval, but in alignment with her deepest values. That woman, she is you. She has always been you. We are simply clearing away what was placed on top of her. I want to speak now to the part of you that is perhaps a little afraid. The part that thinks, this all sounds beautiful, but I don't know if I have what it takes to actually change, to actually try something new, to actually believe at this point in my life that something magnificent is still possible. I want you to know that this fear is completely, entirely 100% normal. The brain, even the beautiful wisdom, rich brain of a woman in her 60s is wired to resist change because it has learned to equate the familiar with safety. But here is the distinction that changes everything. Safety and aliveness are not the same thing. You can be perfectly safe and feel completely dead inside. And somewhere in your body, in the tiredness you feel, in the longing you can't quite name, you already know this. Beginning again does not mean abandoning everything you've built. It means adding a new wing to the house of yourself. It means asking what wants to grow in me now. In this season, with this wisdom, with this hard-won freedom, maybe it's a creative pursuit you set aside decades ago. Maybe it's a conversation you've been afraid to start. Maybe it's a trip you've always told yourself you'd take someday. Maybe it's simply